Hello.
Good evening.
Hey,
How are you?
I'm good. How about you?
I don't believe we've ever met.
No.
Oh, hold on. Let me kill the audio for the watch page.
Mm.
Here we go. Okay.
Oh, we're on air.
Yeah, yeah. I'll
Okay.
broadcast my Hangouts. Yeah, so it's live.
Okay. On your channel.
On my channel. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I just felt like having one. Just got a wild hair. And things I have a lot of things to say, and sometimes some people listen, and I really like that. So I love sharing my views. So, um, So what should I call you? And let's see here. Yeah, Adriana, that's what you'd like me to call you?
Yeah, that's fine. Or Ben
Okay.
sucks. Either way, you just call me later on it. That's easier.
Okay. So, Adriana, tell me a little about yourself, if you might. I think you know probably a little about me. You know that
Mm-hmm.
I'm a Christian and a young Earth
Mm-hmm.
creationist, right?
Yeah. I followed you on Twitter. I saw that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So tell me a little about you and what your views are, so I'll know what something about you.
Well, I'm an atheist. Uh,
Okay. All
I'm
right.
I'm interested in ask you questions though.
Okay, yeah, sure. Can you give me just a minute? I just need to run to the restroom and
Sure.
do something for my cat, and I won't be but a minute or two, I promise.
Okay.
Okay, great, thanks.
Mhm.
Okay, I'm back.
Welcome back.
So tell me, Adriana, how long have you been an atheist?
Uh, I guess I can mention my the conversion story because I've actually converted twice. Uh, so uh, my mom wasn't very religious. And she's basically an atheist, I think, or agnostic. Then my dad was a Christian. I live in the Bible Belt actually. I'm in Oklahoma. So I live. So I was basically raised kind of as a Christian out of. My dad was he's like a laid back Christian. He still believes in evolution and gay marriage and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I
Uh,
live in the Bible Belt too. I'm in Mississippi. That's
mhm.
the Bible Belt, they say.
That's like Mississippi is they have the highest religious rates in the country. So.
Yeah, people in the South tend to be more religious than people that
Mhm.
live up north. That's true. And Mississippi is a place where people are uh, in general, I think, more religious probably than a lot of places in this country. It's true.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
So,
Uh,
how long have you been an atheist? Did you say?
uh, sorry. Let me continue. I grew up everybody in Oklahoma, like most people here, is religious. I used to think that God was like the perfect factor, or whatever, like gravity or whatever. Uh, I just assumed God was the perfect fact, and then when I was 17 years old, it turned out that my sister, I happened to overhear her that my sister was an atheist, and that kind of turn my head thinking more critically, I guess.
You say your
Yeah.
sister was an atheist?
Yeah. I found
Okay,
that out
so I
when
mean,
my
how
own
long
sister.
have you been an atheist, though? I mean,
Yeah, I'm getting there.
okay, all right.
Sorry, it's just a long story. Well, you would like me to turn it, I guess you just say I was 17 when I became an atheist. And I'm 24 now.
You're 24, you said?
Yeah, so that'd be 6 years.
6 years. Oh,
I,
okay,
wait, four,
okay,
15, or right, that'd be 7.
okay.
Mhm,
Okay, well, um, as for me, I don't know why, but I've always believed Jesus Christ is the truth as far back as I can remember. I don't remember a time when I didn't. I don't know why. I don't remember ever not believing in Jesus for one reason or another.
mhm.
Maybe it's because I was brought up as a Christian. I don't know. But um, I, uh,
I have a Bible here, by the way.
uh, I, I, uh, I didn't try at all to be a Christian until I was in my 40s.
Mhm,
Um, I, I made a little stab at it when I was 18, 19, and then
mhm,
fell away.
mhm,
But God drew me back
mhm,
to His Son and put a hook in me, and that hook stuck in my lip, and it wouldn't let go.
mhm,
And been a Christian. Well, I was always a Christian by belief, but
mhm,
been somebody who decided, hey, it's time for me to start taking off these worldly clothes and trying to be a Christian, to really be a Christian, you know.
mhm,
And that's a hard process for some people. It's easy for others. Depends on the baggage you bring when you come to Christ, you know.
mhm,
Some people they come with virtually nothing, you know. Other people
mhm,
come with a mountain of baggage and they're just sweating their head off trying to
mhm,
pull it with them as they come to Christ. It varies from person to person. I came with a lot of baggage,
mhm,
and it's been a struggle for me. But you know my core beliefs are rock solid. Uh, um, I'm a hardcore believer in
mhm,
Christ, um, partly due to having encountered Him in the ways that I have in uh, in my life. Once when I was about 18, 17, really. And then once when I was about 47, had an experience that was truly profound and rocked my world. And I couldn't doubt for a second after that, not that Jesus existed, but that He didn't love me. Just whatever,
mhm,
um, for regardless of what evil I've done in my life, what wrong I've done or will do, I could not doubt from that moment forward that He loved me first and foremost. That was undeniable. And that was a shocking thing, you know, because like I said, it brought a lot of baggage to Christ.
mhm,
And to believe that Christ would love me after all the wrong that I've done was kind of profound thing to think about. You know, you really still love me, really? Uh, that was pretty. It shook me, you know, and it still kind of does to this day. But so that's where I'm at. And then you know, I'm a creationist as well.
yeah.
So you have something in particular that you wished to discuss or
Uh,
questions you wanted to ask?
yeah, I have some questions.
Okay.
I remember there's a couple things that bothers me about the New Testament. It's like about the like the I guess the virgin births. I guess. My question is so the virgin birth is mentioned in like Matthew and it references the Old Testament verse Isaiah 7:14. You know that one?
Isaiah, for a son shall be given. Yes.
Hmm.
The
Uh,
prophecy, is that what you're talking about?
yeah, that one.
A son will be given, his name shall be Counselor, the Almighty. That one. Yeah.
Yeah. Or here I can just look up. I, like I said, I have Bible here. I'll just read from here.
For unto us a son is given.
Therefore the Lord himself shall give you a sign. Behold, a virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and shall call his name Emmanuel. Okay. So my question is, first of all, it is just the English. I'm just reading the English right now, but actually in Hebrew, like for example, the word virgin here actually means just like a young woman.
Right.
And secondly, I think this was supposed to be like a sign for Ahaz. So why is it mentioned in the New Testament if it's supposed to be for Ahaz?
Okay. It's not for Ahaz. That's a false
How do you know?
assumption. Well, because let's consider the words. It says,
Mhm.
um, I think you're referring to Isaiah 6:9. Is that correct?
Is it 6:9?
Is that the one you're referring to? Or am I have the wrong one?
Mm. I don't remember.
Is that the one that says, "For unto us a child is"? No, I'm sorry. I'm thinking of the wrong one. Okay, you're thinking of a different one. Let's get on the same page. Okay, so give me the passage that you're referring to.
I might need to read it again. Didn't say the Lord unto Isaiah, go for now to meet Ahaz. So let's share our church thy son.
You're referring to Isaiah 7:14, I believe, or
Yeah. I'm referring mostly to Psalm 14.
Okay. Well, it says, "The Lord shall give you a sign. Behold, a virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and his name shall be called Emmanuel." What does Emmanuel mean?
God with us.
Yes. Well, there you go. It's not just a sign for uh, a leader of Israel. It's a sign for all of mankind. When the context there, when he says, "It shall be for you a sign," he's not just speaking of that one person. For you, he means all of the speaker means all of Israel. Israel. That when the Lord shall give you a sign, it won't be for him. He's speaking to everyone listening. It wasn't a private conversation between two people. It was a conversation held publicly. So therefore, the Lord shall give you a sign, speaking to all of Israel, and the Son shall be called Emmanuel, God with us. Now, move forward. Jesus Christ's actual Hebrew name was Yeshua. And Yeshua means,
Saves.
Yah means God,
Mm-hmm.
Yeshua means saves. God saves. So the name of God is found in Jesus' name, Yah, Yeshua.
Mm-hmm.
And he came as a savior. So that lines up with Isaiah 7:14. But then let's also consider Isaiah 6. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that one. Isaiah 9:6.
Is it a 9:6?
For unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given, and the government shall be on his shoulder, and his name shall be called Wonderful, Counselor, the Mighty God, the Everlasting Father, the Prince of Peace. So this passage clearly and emphatically states that a child will be given. He'll be a son of Israel. In other words, born in as an Israelite amongst the Israelites from Israelite parents, and his name will be called. He will be called the Father, the Mighty God. And Jesus was called God by the disciples. They stated he was God in the flesh. Jesus Christ acknowledged, of course, that he is God on several occasions. In fact, he stated, "I am," 200 times. "I am the way, the truth, and the life. I am the good shepherd. I am the light of the world. I am, 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 I am." When you say "I am" that many times, you need to think about what is this I am he means. And it's the I am who spoke to Abraham on the mount. Moses said to God, what is your name? That I go back and tell the Hebrews, what God is this that you are that sent me? And God spoke to Moses, said, tell them, I am that I am hath sent you. In other words, I have no explanation for myself. I need none. I'm everlasting, eternal. I have no cause. I exist simply because I do. Nothing came before me. Nothing comes after me. I am that I am. I have no explanation. I don't need an explanation. I'm immortal, eternal. I've always been, will always be. So when Jesus says 200 times, I am this, I am that, I am, 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 we should be able to put a picture together. What is this I am that he means when he says it so many times? And it's actually a reference to the great I am who spoke to Moses on the mount. It's not hard to put that two and two together, really. You can say it's not true, but you kind of have to do mental gymnastics to get around it, if you ask me. So Jesus Christ was emphatic that he is God manifest in the flesh. The Old Testament states that God will become manifest in the flesh. And the apostles acknowledge that Jesus Christ is God manifest in the flesh. There's even a passage in the Old Testament where God says that he would be the one who's crucified on the cross. He doesn't say it with those words, but consider that.
Actually, I have another question about that. So I guess you believe in the Trinity.
Well, I don't believe there are three persons. I think Trinitarians are mistaken about that. I believe God is Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. That's how he presents himself. But I don't believe in three persons. And I'm not a Unitarianist. I'm not a Trinitarian. I'm a Trinitarian. I just disagree with the use of the word person to describe it. That's it. That's all.
Okay, so then I guess I'll revert my question. So I think there's some a theory about the New Testament that says that when you read from Mark, Matthew, Luke, John, like that in that order, you see a progression from Jesus the man to Jesus the God or demigod, basically. So my question for you is, where is the concept of Jesus as God in the Gospel of Mark?
In Mark, okay. All right, just a second.
I think I already know what you're going to say, but I'll wait.
Okay. Okay, in Mark 2, Mark 3:22.
3:22.
I'll read it. And the scribes came down from Jerusalem, said, he hath Beelzebub, and the prince of the devils casteth, by the prince of the devils casteth he out devils. In other words, they were claiming Jesus was possessed by a demon, and this by Satan himself. And this is how he had the power to exorcise demons out of people, because he was Satan.
Okay, but that's not God.
Oh, let me finish. And he called unto them and said unto them in parables, how can Satan cast out Satan? And if a kingdom be divided against itself, that kingdom cannot stand. In other words, he refutes them on a logical grounds. That's ridiculous. Why would Satan cast out his own? That makes no sense. And then he goes on to say, and if a house be divided against itself, that house cannot stand. And if Satan rises up against himself, and he be divided, he cannot stand, but hath an end. No man can enter into this is the censure here. He said, no man can enter into a strong man's house and spoil his goods, except that he first bind the strong man, and then he will spoil his house. What Jesus is saying when he said that is, I've already bound Satan, and now I'm spoiling his kingdom.
I didn't know.
So when Jesus says that he has spoiled Satan's kingdom because he's already bound Satan, that means that
Uh,
he has authority over Satan. He has power over Satan, and Satan
okay.
is nothing in power in comparison to him. And Satan is considered, of course, the highest demonic power of the universe. So if Christ has the power to bind Satan and spoil his kingdom, it's
Uh,
obvious that he has the
mm,
power of God.
well, God can give him power, but it doesn't mean he is God.
Okay. Well, it says, well, uh, who has does power, God share his glory with another?
Um,
See, there's the problem you run into there. God
well, that's
says
not
in the
true.
old,
According to the Bible,
hold on,
I
let,
think
let me respond. Let's not talk over each other always. Okay.
I'm
I
not
know, I know
talking.
you're anxious and you have things to say, and I'll let you. But the thing is, in the Old Testament, God says more than twice, I will not share my glory with any other. And Jesus Christ had the glory of God. He declared that he would in fact return with the glory of God in the heavens, and the
Wait,
angels of God would come
he
with
doesn't give
him.
his
So
glory. What about
if
Moses?
Jesus has the glory of God,
What about
which is the
Moses?
power, if Jesus has the power of God to bind Satan, then he's God. God
Uh,
won't share his glory with another. So God's not
what
going to
Moses?
give to a mortal human being the power to bind the most powerful entity he ever created. That wouldn't make sense.
What about Moses? He gave him power. God gave him power.
Well, true, but
So
only because he is God. That's why. See, otherwise you have a contradiction,
wait, so
and the
Moses
Bible
is
doesn't
God?
contradict itself. See, so if what you're saying was an argument, then the Bible
You're
contradicts
claiming
itself.
that Jesus is God because he is power from God, and
Mhm.
then Moses would be God too, since he is power from God, right?
Yes, but there's a contradiction if God it doesn't share glory with anybody else. See, but the Bible doesn't contradict itself. The solution to there not being a contradiction is that Jesus is God. You see, if you acknowledge Christ as God, there's no
Okay.
contradiction, no problem.
So, so you think Moses is God?
No,
Why is
Moses
Jesus
didn't have the
God?
power of God.
Yeah, he did.
Moses, no, God did things on behalf of Moses. Moses never
So
claimed to have the
Why can't Jesus have used power on behalf of God?
Moses never claimed to have the power of God. Jesus did. There's a great difference. Moses never claimed himself to be anything more than a man. He was, in fact, a sinner and murdered an Egyptian slave for not working. He beat him to the point that he died. That's a murderer. Jesus could not do that. Jesus is not a sinner. He could not sin. He never sinned. So now there's a passage in the Old Testament which says that in which God actually says to us that he would be the one who is crucified on the cross. He doesn't say it with those words, but this is it. Zechariah 12:10. He says, "And I will pour it out upon the house of David and upon the inhabitants of Jerusalem the spirit of grace and of supplication, and they shall look upon me whom they have pierced, and shall mourn for him as one mourneth for his only son, and shall be in bitterness for him as one is in bitterness for his firstborn." And Jesus Christ is said to be the firstborn of creation. We Christians are born again because Christ was born again at the resurrection. We will be resurrected like him. Christian doctrine states that theology is that we Christians died with Christ on the cross, and we will be raised immortal like him because he was raised immortal. See, and he was the firstborn of creation. Then it also says that he is his only son, as one who mourneth for his only son. Christ is the only begotten Son of God. So, and they were definitely bitter for him. So this passage, Zechariah 12:10, is a passage where God's saying that he will be the one that goes to the cross to pay the price for our sin and will enter his own creation as the firstborn. God's saying they will look upon me. God is the speaker in that
Can I
passage.
ask a question?
Okay.
Uh, okay, so I'm reading the thing we read in Mark, and where it says, and if a kingdom be divided against itself, the kingdom cannot stand. And if a house be divided against itself, the house cannot stand. My question is, I don't see where you're getting that Jesus didn't get his power on behalf of God.
Well, I didn't say had the power on behalf of God. I said he has the power because he is God,
But
God the Son.
I'm saying that he got power on behalf of God in this verse. Where does it say
The
that he
scripture
got?
doesn't say he got his power on behalf of God. It
Okay,
says he
well,
is.
then
The
I think
Bible, the New
okay.
Testament authors state that he has the glory of God because he is God.
Where does it say
Yeah.
that?
All over in the New Testament does it state that
Come
Jesus
on.
has the glory of God. I mean, there's got to be 50 statements like that in the New
Tell me where
Testament.
in Mark. I'm talking about Mark.
Okay,
Where is it in Mark?
okay, okay. All right, hold on just a moment. All right,
Sorry. Sorry, I'm just asking questions.
okay,
My question is, where does it say he got on
okay.
behalf?
Mark 8:38, Mark
Okay.
13:26. Both state Jesus Christ has the glory of God, and he shall appear. Then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven. And then shall all the tribes of the earth mourn, for they shall see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. And Mark 13:26. And then they shall see the Son of Man coming in the clouds with great power and glory. So there's two statements that Jesus Christ has the glory of God in Mark. There's four in Matthew.
Well,
There's two
my
in
question
Luke
was
and one in
specifically
Revelation.
for Mark. My question was specifically for Mark.
Well, I gave you two.
Okay.
Yeah. So now about this passage, Zechariah 12:10. Think about this. God is the speaker in this passage. This is God speaking through the mouth of the prophet Zechariah, and he's saying that he says, "They shall look upon me, whom they have pierced, and they shall mourn for him, as one mourneth for his only son, and shall be in bitterness for him, as one is in bitterness for his firstborn." They
Uh,
shall look upon me whom they have pierced. Who did the Israelites pierce? It was Christ on the cross they pierced. Right? There's more than one past prophecy of Jesus Christ which speaks of him being pierced, uh, and and uh, and this is Christ on the cross. They will look upon me, or they when God says they will look upon me whom they have pierced. How can they pierce God? God is a spirit. He's not flesh. He doesn't have a body. The only way for them to pierce God is for God to take on a human flesh so they can do it to his flesh. So this is God speaking in the Old Testament, stating that he would go to the cross for our sin. He himself would do it.
can you tell me that Zechariah passage again?
I'm sorry, tell you what passage that is?
Can you tell me the Zechariah passage you mentioned again?
Zechariah 12:10. You might
Oh,
want to check these things out in the King James Bible. It's a better translation.
yeah, that's why I have. Yeah, that's King James. I will pour upon the house of David and upon the inhabitants of Jerusalem the spirit of grace and of supplication, and they shall look upon me whom they have pierced. They shall mourn for him, and shall mourn for his only son, and shall be in bitterness for him, as one that is in bitterness for his firstborn. Okay, okay, I guess we'll, okay, about this, okay, when it says, okay, so the word glory, I guess, okay, again, I'm mostly I'm talking Mark, it's only one verse to Mark, where does it say God only gives glory to,
Well, I gave you two
right,
passages, and there's numerous passages that tell us of the divinity of Jesus Christ throughout the New Testament.
well, again, I'm only talking about Mark.
Well, I've given you two in Mark,
Okay.
and there's plenty others of passages in the other book texts as well. So I think what you're thinking is, well, the others are copies of Mark, right? and
Uh,
so they
but
embellished, right? That's kind of what you're thinking, right?
yeah, I think.
Yeah, but that's a false theory.
Well,
It's not true.
okay. Well, I'm asking you to prove it.
Well, I mean, you haven't given me evidence to believe, reason to believe
Well,
that they're copies. They're two
that's the reason
distinct
why.
accounts of the same events. Matthew, Mark are
That's why
two
I'm asking you for
distinct
the
accounts.
Trinity. That's why I'm asking you where it says
They're,
God.
they're two accounts written by different men of some of the same events
That's
of
why I'm asking
Jesus'
you
life.
where
If
God
you
is.
want to believe that Mark is just a duplicate of Jesus, why isn't Matthew? How come it's not an exact copy? Why is it written as though it was another man speaking of having the same witnessing the same things? How come it's not just a copy of
That's
Mark?
why I'm me asking my questions. I believe that the thing about God being about Jesus as being God is a later addition, and that's why I'm asking this question.
Right, but I just asked you. Okay, so instead of asking the question, I'll make this a statement. We have no reason to believe Matthew is a copy of Mark, because Matthew is written from a separate man's perspective about some of the same events, not all
Well,
the same
if
events.
the
Now, if you're going to talk over me, this hangout's over. Okay, we're not going to talk over
I'm
each
not
other
talking over you,
constantly.
I'm asking the
Every
question.
time I try to speak, you try to talk over me, and that's rude. So let's have I allow you to speak, you allow me to speak, okay? Okay. So if you want response to these things, you have to let me give one. Okay. So I would believe that Matthew is a copy of Mark if it was a duplicate of Mark, but it's not.
But there's no proof that Jesus is God in Mark, then I'm just not gonna believe. Like I'm
Well,
not gonna believe.
I only gave you two about the glory of God. I didn't give you all the passages in Mark
Okay, well I'm listening.
that speak of
I'm still
the
listening.
Jesus being God, and there's plenty in the other texts. I mean, if you're going to
I'm not
limit it
let's
to
hear about our text.
if you're going to limit it to Mark, I mean, I don't
I
know
am
where to
limiting
go
it to
then.
Mark because I think that's the first person that wrote it, and so
That
and then the like, and then the Jesus being God is just, it's a later addition.
Okay, but so if it were the first text
I'm asking you
written,
to disprove it.
then you're just assuming that because Mark wrote his, everybody jumped on ship and started writing theirs too, to try to add make up a similar story to fix up Mark. That
Mm-hmm.
there's no rationale to that. Doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Just because
It,
one
it,
guy, just because one guy decided to ruin his life by putting himself at odds with the Sanhedrin and making himself hunted and wanted by the Roman army, doesn't mean 11 other guys are going to jump on the same boat. That doesn't add up for me. If you knew somebody that decided to make up a bunch of crap and knowing that he was going to be ousted by his own society and the leaders, everybody who made more than 40 everybody who made more than $30,000 a year in your culture was going to hate you, and the Romans who ruled over them was going to want to hunt you down and kill you. Do you really think that these guys are going to say, oh yeah, I'm in, sounds like fun, man, let me write my own one of these so the Romans can hunt me down on horseback? I don't think so. That doesn't add up for me. I got to do something for my wife. I'll be right back. Okay, please
mhm.
hang on. Okay, I'm back.
Mhm.
My wife is handicapped, and I have to do
Oh,
almost everything for her.
oh, sorry about that.
Okay, so now I just gave you two passages that speak of
Okay.
the glory of God, Jesus having the glory of God in Mark. Okay, so
Okay.
there's Mark 8:31,
31.
where he stated that he had to go to the cross, and he began to teach them the Son of Man must suffer many things, and be rejected of the elders and the priests, chiefs, and scribes, and be killed. After 3 days, will rise again. So he predicted, didn't actually predict, he foretold of his own resurrection in Mark 8:31.
Uh, I, I don't think you've already said this.
Can a mortal man rise from the dead?
But maybe he didn't rise at all.
No, but God could rise from the dead if he chose. A
Uh,
mortal man can't do it under his own power.
unless it's behalf of God.
Um, well, God can do it.
Yeah, God
So
could.
Jesus, okay, so let me give you an argument that Jesus can't be a mortal man. That
Mhm.
Jesus can't be. Okay, theological argument from Christology
Okay,
where Jesus
I'm
can't
not
be a
claiming
mortal man.
Mark. I'm not claiming the Bible says that Jesus is not God. I'm claiming that Mark says that doesn't. I'm claiming Mark doesn't say Jesus is God, and so if it's a later addition.
Let me put it to you like this. If Mark didn't say Jesus is God, wouldn't
Mhm.
be an argument against the validity of of Christology that Jesus
Yeah,
Christ is God, because
I
I
disagree.
would have it in so many other places in the other gospels that it really wouldn't matter. You would have to believe then all the other
But then
guys.
I think
No, wait a minute. Let me
I think that's
finish. No, let me
I think
finish.
that's
Let me
evidence.
finish. You would have to believe that
I
the
think
other
that's evidence
gospels.
that it's a later addition. Then
You
you
would have
can't.
to believe that the other gospels fabricated all those statements that he's God. Now, if you do that, you open a massive can of worms that I guarantee you're not going to be able to support. There's no way you're going to make a valid case that that Matthew, Luke, John, Paul, Peter all invented the idea that Jesus is God, and they conspired to do this. There's no logical argument that can be made for that. Nothing. Firstly, nobody writes I mean, how they could achieve it working together is another thing. They weren't even, Luke was a physician. That's a middle class guy, upper middle class. Uh, 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 Peter was a tax collector. He was middle class, educated man, government employee. Some of the other guys were fishermen. Look, I'm telling you, tax collectors and physicians in ancient Israel, they don't hang out together. You don't see them at the local bar having a beer. These pious guys would never associate with each other. In fact, Peter hated Matthew. I'm sorry, Matthew was the tax collector. Peter hated Matthew when he first met him because he's a tax collector. How can you hang out with this scumbag? He said in so many words, and Jesus corrected him about that. And so these guys would never conspire together. You're not going to find a doctor, a tax collector, and some stinky fishermen who to get together and conspire to tell a fake story. It doesn't add up. Okay. Now, so, I mean, good luck with that. That's just not plausible. And then how could they have achieved it? By fulfilling all these prophecies of the Old Testament. You know what they would have had to have gone through to do that? They would have each had to have had a copy of the Old Testament, the whole thing, and spent countless hours poring through it to pluck out passages that could turn into a fake prophecy of Jesus and write a fake thing that happened to the real historical man, Jesus Christ of Nazareth, and say that it came true after the fact, and they would have had to have matched. Then suddenly, they would have all had to have written the same thing. That they just came to the same conclusion. Otherwise, they had conspired together. Now, to conspire together and accomplish this, they would have had to have met together at somebody's house almost every night for a couple of years, studying the Old Testament and plucking out passages and writing a congruent story, making sure they didn't contradict each other, and all this stuff. You're really going to get a physician, a tax collector, and some stinky fishermen together at one of their houses every night eating out of one guy's refrigerator for a couple of years to concoct a big fat story that's going to get them nothing but ousted by Israel and hunted by the Romans? Doesn't add up. It's not going to happen. No, so they all wrote their own account of what they knew to be true about the same man, Jesus Christ. You see, the idea they've conspired to do this can't possibly be supported by any reasonable argument. Well, she left. Maybe she just got disconnected. Maybe she left because she realized I just smashed and ground her argument to pieces. I don't know. Well, I don't know which it was, but the young lady just left the hangout when I was making my argument about that. She just disappeared. There's two possibilities. She realized how ridiculous it was and became embarrassed and left, or she lost her internet connection. I'm not going to assume one or the other. I'll just say she left. Those are the two options. So, the conspiracy idea, it fails hardcore. It just falls flat on its face. Easily demonstrable. Demolishable, I mean. Can't possibly be believed. It's just not rational. The conspiracy theory is just absolutely bogus. It's probably actually the worst idea that anybody ever came up with against the validity of the divinity of Jesus Christ found in the New Testament, or the fulfillment of prophecy. The worst. It is the worst. It's as bad as they get, brother. There isn't, I don't think, any arguments that get any worse than that, because it just can't possibly be believed. Once somebody starts considering all the things they would have to believe it's true, they realize how ridiculous that idea is. That these guys conspired together to write the things they did about Jesus. That it was all faked up and worked out. Just can't possibly believe that. It's just too ridiculous. So, I mean, I'm kind of disappointed she left. I only gave her two passages referring to the glory of Christ in Mark. I could have given her other, I was planning on giving her other passages in Mark that allude to Christ's divinity. So, so I think I'll go through some stuff. I'll answer questions if anybody has any, but I want to show you guys some interesting uh, secular stuff, because they're always making ridiculous claims of evolution, and in articles on the internet, the news media, and it just gets really outrageous. You know what these people claim. It's so unsupportable. So I'm going to share a screen share. I think some things. Okay, so one at a time here. Let's see here. Let's see here. Okay. Here's an interesting one. Megalodon spent millions of years sharpening its massive teeth. Um, this is an article from Fox News. Even Fox News gets things wrong. They're science people. So, interesting thing here is that megalodon. They call megalodon a giant species of shark, and they claim that megalodon is not the actual direct ancestor of great whites. The truth is, megalodon is nothing but a great white. That's just how big great whites got in the past. The fossil record has numerous examples of what we call megafauna, creatures which are of truly massive size, creatures of known species that today simply cannot grow to those astonishing sizes. But in the past, they did. Crocodiles that were 50 feet long, uh, 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 fish the size of a bus, city bus, roaches 18 inches long, sea scorpions 6 feet long instead of 2 feet like they are today, elk that had a shoulder height of 7 feet, camels that were twice the size of a modern camel. The list goes on and on and on and on. So megalodon is it looks exactly like a great white in their illustrations because that's all it was. That's how big great white sharks were in the past. Just a great white shark, nothing more. So they say now 22 million year old monkey species found in Africa. Interesting thing about that is they're always pushing the timelines further and further back. That's what they do for evolution. They find something and claim it's older and older and older and older, and everything just keeps getting older and older. What are they going to do when they start pushing time further back for everything to the point where they have no time for the evolution of the first life to complex forms and apes themselves? If they keep pushing everything back, the reason they keep pushing everything back is because they keep running into the evidence that God created everything at the same time. They keep pushing things closer together, but they'll never try to overlap them. You see, it's because of the evolution paradigm. Here's an article, Mammoth Moves. Frozen cells come to life, but only just. So they marginally brought some cells, it looks like, from a frozen mammoth back to life. They became active. They state here, this suggests that despite the years that have passed, cell activity can still happen and parts of it can be recreated. They say, until now, many studies have focused on analysis of fossil DNA and were neither, and not whether they are still functional. So the fact is this is, if they actually brought these frozen mammoth cells back to life, um, even marginally, it simply couldn't happen if the mammoth was as old as they claimed. And the reason for that is that DNA is now known to decay at a rate so fast that it has what they scientists are calling 521 year, that's what they think, a half-life. I was debating Dr. Dan Lorhammer of University of Uppsala about 2 years ago, and I mentioned the half-life of DNA, and he acted like he was shocked to hear it. He said, the half-life of DNA? I said, yes. As he had never heard that. And I was surprised because he's a geneticist and he should have known about this. So the truth is that DNA has known decay rate. In 521 years or so, they think, that's probably very roughly correct, half of it will have decayed into bits. Another 520 years, the other half of that. You have a quarter of it left. Another 521 years, you have an eighth of it left, and so on and so forth. You can see how fast, in just a few thousand years, no usable DNA at all. No cell function is going to happen without DNA. It's just not going to come alive. So if they in fact brought these mammoth cells back to life, then they couldn't have had any genetic activity because DNA actually wouldn't exist that long. And if they find DNA from mammoths in DNA in a mammoth cell, then it verifies for us the mammoth is only a few thousand years old. Now they think that they're 10,000 years old. That can't be. Uh-oh, hold on just a second. Okay, so I'm back. Here's an article that says the way you speak now was shaped by what your ancestors ate. This one's pretty hilarious, isn't it? Here's what they say. It's widely known that languages evolve as societies develop, but the sounds we utter are also shaped literally by the placement of our jaw, and that's influenced by how we chew. So these ridiculous evolutionists are believing that man evolved because we were some hominid thing at one time, uh, came from one, that man's modern speech evolved because of the way he ate. Isn't that ridiculous? These people are willing to believe the craziest things. Craziest. Because of their belief in evolution, they are willing to believe the craziest things. So now here's a huge fossil discovery made in China. They recently discovered numerous Precambrian creatures in China. They've made big Cambrian discoveries in China already, and these discoveries, of course, overthrow evolution theory. But they made another recently, all kinds of Cambrian creatures, and some species that were previously unknown. Well, the Cambrian explosion simply argues against evolution theory because it shows that in the Cambrian, virtually every phyla of life existed. Body plans so complete, so astonishingly complex, so mind-bendingly complex in a sliver of time, according to the evolutionist theory, within 500 million years, life went from a cell to all these astonishingly complex forms. And it is called the Cambrian explosion. Life just exploded in all these extremely complex various forms. And that does not jive with the slow, gradual, transitional process of Darwinian evolution. Doesn't mesh. Now, you'll hear evolutionists falsely state that, well, the Cambrian is explained by evolution. No, it's not. That's a rescue device. That's a lie. The Cambrian explosion refutes evolution theory. The evolutionists have concocted a false statement that it actually supports evolution, which it does not. It refutes it as a rescue device, trying to salvage evolution theory from the damning evidence against it. So I'll be happy to share some more of these things with you, perhaps. Um, so somebody said they wanted to join this hangout, a person or two, and wanted to join because I was in a hangout, and somebody, two people expressed an interest in joining the hangout that I said I would have after the debate that I watched with Dr. Price and a Christian, and but they didn't show up. I guess apparently they didn't want to. I don't know. Maybe they realized they wouldn't be able to put forth a good argument if that's what they were trying to do. So anyway, since they didn't show up, I think I'll just call it an evening for this hangout. I'm just going to close it down. I'll share this information that I have about other things another time. But hangouts usually are things that I want to have when I have other people to discuss stuff with. And since apparently it's not a good night for that, I'm just going to close it off and say thanks for coming. Anybody who watches, appreciate you. And have a good evening. God bless.